Pan-African Television. My name is Ivan Bans Aban. We're live on Facebook at Pan-African Television and, of course, on YouTube at Pan-African Television. We're live across 46 African countries and other parts of Europe. Well, today, topic tabled for our conversation is debt restructuring and, of course, its implication on the masses. Yes, so today we ask a very important question, a very simple question. What does it mean for a country to conduct debt restructuring, and what is the economic implication on the masses, or to some extent the society? Today in the studio we've been joined by the Secretary or General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jnr, to help us discuss this matter or this very conversation extensively. So ladies and gentlemen, with a sound round of applause, help me invite onto the podium Comrade Kwesi Pratt Jnr.
Well, it's a pleasure always to be on this platform, this interactive platform, which looks at all the kinds of problems that confront us and which tries to find solutions to the problems. Now, to start with, I'd like to make a confession. I'm not an economist, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not a regular politician. I didn't school in Harvard, I didn't go to Oxford. So I am who I am, like any other Ghanaian. One of my worries about this discussion is that it's been discussed in language. We carried on the discussion in language which is totally strange, and language which tends to mask the reality of our situation. So, for example, when the economists, the Harvard-educated people and so on, discuss this very problem, they tell us about haircut. And everybody is wondering about what is a haircut? Because normally a haircut is meant to beautify, is meant to make you look smart and so on. Now we are talking about a crisis which is actually sinking our country. And we are discussing it in language which describes what is being done as haircut and so on. It's pretty confusing. Now, I like to make the point that this country is sinking. And unless something very radical happens immediately, now, we are in deep, deep trouble. Now, what is the nature of the trouble that we are in? We have borrowed so much. We have borrowed so much, and we are unable to produce the resources we need to sell in order to generate the funds to pay for the debt. Now, when the Minister of Finance spoke about this very problem, what he told us was that total national revenue, we needed about 120% of total national revenue to do debt servicing, debt repayment, and to pay public sector workers, government workers. Now, if you translate this into language that all of us can understand, it means that government is incapable of doing anything. Government cannot build gutters, it cannot build roads, it cannot provide potable water. Indeed, if the president were to make a decision today to drive from his office to this television station, and we have to pay for his petrol, we have to borrow in order to pay for the petrol. It means that government business has grounded to a halt, complete halt. That is the description. Now, one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, how did we get here? How come that we borrowed so much that we can't pay? How come that we borrowed so much that now we have become bankrupt? This country has become bankrupt. This country is incapable of doing anything without borrowing. And it's very simple. If you want to go into history, it's a very long history. There was a time when European adventurers, buccaneers, and thieves raided our part of the world for the sole purpose of capturing the best of our people and sending them to build the basis of capitalism in the United States of America and other places. So they captured our engineers, our architects, our medical practitioners and so on, and shipped them in the millions to go and work on the slave plantations and so on. Now that depleted this continent of vital human resources it needed for its development. And that began the story of our dependence. Then, of course, there was the era of classical colonialism, where we could not choose our own leaders. The leaders were imposed on us. The governor was a representative of the Queen of England, and where our resources were not owned by us, and we could not exploit our resources for our own, development and so on. And then there's the third phase, where we actually gained independence, political independence, but the things that attached us to the apron strings of the colonial metropolis remained intact. So if you look at the railway line, which I tend to use most of the time to illustrate what I say, all the railway lines in this country move from areas of concentration of wealth to the ports. And it tells us the story that all of these are resources, our gold, our diamond, our bauxite, and so on. The railway lines were meant to facilitate their export to the colonial metropolis and so on. Now, there were three broad objectives of the independence movement. One of the objectives was to ensure that we could elect our own leaders, we could decide our own political system. The second objective, of course, was for us to own our own resources. And the third objective was for us to exploit these resources for the benefit of our own people. We have not been able to achieve any of these. Yes, of course, we do elections every now and then and elect all kinds of people and so on. Do they really represent the interests of the masses of our people? Of course, we know that they don't, okay? So that is the structure. And it is not true that we are the only people who know that there's a problem with this structure of the national economy. There's a problem with this structure of our society. When the current president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, was campaigning to be elected as president, he did make the point that we needed to move away from the Goggisberg economy. What is the Goggisberg economy? The Goggisberg economy is a colonial economy. And the fact that he made that point shows that he recognizes the problem. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to do anything about the problem. Okay. Now, debt restructuring, what is it? Debt restructuring, in very simple, commonsensical language, is that we borrow so much we can't pay, interest are due, and so on. So we are meeting with those who lent us the money, entering into an arrangement with those who lent us the money to change the terms of the borrowing in order to give us breathing space. So, for example, we may agree with them that interest which are due this year interest payments should be suspended for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years. But the debt is still there. And the interest will be paid at some other time. You understand? It gives us a breathing space because we suspend interest payments this year so that we can save some money to do some things. But the debt is still there. The debt stock is still there. Now, there are two types of debts. There's the domestic debt and the international debt. Now, for the international debt, government has entered into negotiations with those who gave us those loans. We understand that government has appointed consultants. Those who gave us those loans have also appointed consultants, and the two consultants are meeting together in order to find some solution, in order to find some space, some respite for the government of Ghana. For the local persons, the Ghanaian people who bought government bonds and so who lent money, government is not negotiating with them. Government simply has made up its mind about what to do. They are not going to earn any interest this year. Government has come up with a set of measures, not through negotiations. And in fact, government is saying that all those who refuse to sign up to what it has agreed will lose some of their investment, if not all, and so on. So this is the government position. Government is not negotiating at all with them. Government is imposing a solution on them. Now, as part of the whole arrangement, government decided on what it called the debt exchange program, and all of us know about the reaction of organized labor leading to government, beating a retreat. Something baffles me. Our complaint now is that we are borrowing too much. We can't pay the debts. Now, what is the solution which is being put forward? The solution which is being put forward simply is that let's take more loans. Okay? We are going to the IMF. We are going to sign up a deal. We are going to sign a deal with the IMF so that the IMF can give us about $3 billion. But that $3 billion is not a gift. It's still a loan. And only yesterday I was reading that the IMF has also increased its interest on its lending, the special drawing rights and so on, its lending to other countries and so on. So we are taking more loans in order to be able to manage loans you have taken before, which we are unable to pay. The logic in it is problematic. I find the logic in it exceedingly, problematic. But here we are. Now, what is the impact of all of this on the Ghanaian people? One of the things that all of us know is that as a result of these negotiations, our government has agreed on a job freeze in the public and civil sectors of our country. So for a certain period, maybe 3 years and more, government is a stop from employing people in the civil service, in the public service, and in the parastatals. There will be no employment. Now, if you come to think of the fact that the unemployment rate is so high, we don't have reliable figures, but everybody knows that the unemployment figure is so high. Every home you go to, you find the unemployed. You turn left, you find the unemployed. You turn right, you find the unemployed. We know that's a huge problem. Even as the statistics is not reliable, we know. Now, how do we solve the unemployment problem when there's a job freeze? When there's a freeze on employment? That's a problem we have to grapple with. I think it's also important for us to understand the modus operandi of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and such institutions. The institutions which have come to be known as the Bretton Woods institutions. Now, these institutions were set up in order to protect Western financial institutions from collapse. These institutions were not set up so that African countries can build schools, can build hospitals, and so on. They were simply set up to protect Western financial institutions from collapse. So if you look at the Ghanaian situation in Ghana, we've gone to the IMF for redemption 18 times already. We've gone to the IMF for redemption 18 times. And each time we go, our situation becomes worse. Now, if you look at the Ghanaian situation, especially if you take 1983, 82, 83, you would find that all the measures which are agreed with the IMF and the World Bank are intended for government to make a lot more money so that it can pay its debts. Now, if you look at 1982-83, what did we do? Again, we froze employment in the public sector. We then withdrew subsidies on social services such as education and health in order to make savings. We then embarked upon a policy of retrenchment of labor, and more than 300,000 workers were retrenched in a matter of just 1 year. And then we were asked to devalue our currency. And since then, cumulatively, the national currency has been devalued by more than 30,000%. I mean, try and wrap your head around this 30,000% devaluation. That's what we have suffered and so on. Then, of course, we were also advised to privatize state enterprises. And more than 400 factories built by the Nkrumah government were put on the divestiture program and so on. Now, how does all of this affect the Ghanaian people? What happened in the health sector was that at a certain point, if you were driving around and you had an accident and were taken to a hospital, no hospital will take you in until you are able to pay for the cost of your treatment. And imagine sick people or people who are involved in accidents who are driven to hospitals and they have to pay. You probably will be unconscious. Even if you have the money will not be available to pay. What we also found was that access to education was greatly limited because of the withdrawal of subsidies on education and so on. And this is the, is the reality. So this has been the consequence over the years. Now, is it Einstein? Yes, I think it's Einstein who said that if you keep doing the same thing all the time and you expect a different result, you need to call in the psychiatrist to examine your head. I think that we've come to the point where our leaders need to visit the psychiatric hospital. Because we've gone there 18 times, not once, not twice, 1, 2, 3, 18 times. And we are expecting a different result. Einstein must be right. We need to call in the psychiatrist to examine the heads of our leaders. You understand? That's a real big problem. 18 times, not once, not twice, and so on. Now, what is the way out for us? The way out, some say, is a fundamental restructuring of the national economy. Those are very big words, are they not? What is a fundamental restructuring of the Ghanaian economy? I like to simplify it. The fundamental restructuring of our economy should simply mean that we make an effort to change the existing order of things, not just in Ghana, but throughout the world. Now, why do I say this? You know that the United States of America is heavily indebted. Heavily, probably more heavily indebted than Ghana. United States of America is heavily indebted. Ghana is also heavily indebted. But the United States of America is heavily indebted in dollars. Okay? So how does the United States of America fill that gap? Simply by printing more dollars. Okay? Now we owe in dollars. We can't print dollars. So how do we pay for our indebtedness in dollars? We pay for our indebtedness in dollars by producing more things that we can sell in dollars in order to generate dollars to pay our debts. That's the fundamental difference between us and the United States of America. So what do we do? If the world was reordered in a way where the dollar was not the currency of preference for international trade and so on, and our obligations, our debt obligations are denominated in a currency that we can also print, we will have some of the comfort that the United States of America has. Of course, they say it leads to inflation and so on, but it's more comfortable than the situation in which we are today. Now we have a situation where we are the 6th largest producer of gold in the world. And recently we used to be the biggest producer of gold in Africa. Okay. But the gold we produce, where does it go? How does it benefit us? We produced a lot of gold, but we have signed a foreign exchange retention agreement with the multinational corporations, which allows them to keep 98% of the total value of gold produced in this country outside the Ghanaian economy. This must change. This regime needs to change. Ghana is the 2nd largest producer of cocoa in the whole world, second to La Côte d'Ivoire. What is the benefit that the Ghanaian people get from cocoa production? Next to nothing. Okay? In fact, the multinational corporations involved in turning cocoa powder into chocolate and so on make 20 times. For some reason, which we all know, I mean, government policy has strangulated them completely. So today, if you are talking about major road construction and so on, it's not being done by Ghanaian companies anymore. It's being done by foreign contractors, and you know them. You understand? Now, these foreign contractors come here, they do work, they get paid, and they ship their profits outside the Ghanaian economy. The Ghanaian companies, if they do the work, keep their profits here, and so on. So we need to rethink all of this. You know, a fundamental restructuring of our economy would mean that we need to look at our needs and our capability to fulfill the needs and link them. If you look at Ghana, all the 16 regions of Ghana have favorable conditions for the production of rice. And yet, Ghana is one of the largest importers of rice. It simply doesn't make sense. This must change. Okay? What is even more interesting is that the nutritionists tell us that our rice is far more nutritious than the rice we import. So that's an additional incentive for us to produce our own rice and feed ourselves. I'm wondering if there's anybody who can give one good reason, just one good reason, why Ghana continues to be an importer of fish. Just one good reason. At the very least, we are bordered in the south by the Atlantic Ocean. True? Then, if you look at Ghana, I wish there were a map of Ghana here. The whole of our land is crisscrossed by rivers. The Volta River starts all the way from Burkina Faso and empties into the Atlantic Ocean. What do you need to produce fish? And yet, Ghana imports fish. Now, we are living in the tropics. We have rainforest and so on. We have favorable conditions for the cultivation of virtually everything, tubers, vegetables, and so on. We don't have winter here. In fact, we can grow food all year round. And yet, can you imagine? Ghana is the third largest importer of tomato paste from Germany. It doesn't make sense, does it? And recently, when the Ukrainian war broke out, our politicians were hopping from platform to platform, declaring that the war has affected our ability, our access to food, and so on. And then we sit down, we wonder, but Africa has 70% of the arable lands of the world. 70% of the arable lands of the whole world. We have 70% of the arable land of the world, and we are complaining that there's war in Ukraine and we can't feed ourselves. That situation also needs to change. You understand? So debt restructuring has all manner of implications for us. It will exacerbate the poverty situation for our people. It will limit access to social services. It's going to be a lot more difficult to employ people. It will not change the current dynamic in which we continue to be the hewers of wood and drawers of water for the capitalist states. And this dynamic ought to change. But the change would not come by accident. The change will come, first of all, if we continue to appreciate our reality. If we know the facts about ourselves and our economy and our relations with others in the world, it becomes a basis. Then we must look at the world and how it has developed over the ages and see whether there are better alternatives, which enables us to own our resources, control those resources, and exploit those resources for our own benefit. And that, I like to submit, is only possible in a socialist regime. And a socialist regime is not going to fall from the skies. A socialist regime is the result of struggle. It's the result of struggle. So things will change, things can change, but things can change and will change only because we struggle to build a better world. A world in which no child will go to bed on an empty stomach. A world in which we, as Africans, as Ghanaian people, can hold our shoulders high and feel as dignified as any other people anywhere in the world. That is the world we seek to build. That is the world we must build. And that is the world which will bring prosperity to our people. Thank you.
Very powerful. I think we should do it one more time for him. Okay. I think for me, one of the things that I picked out of submission has to do with appreciating our reality, forms part of the basics of restructuring our economy, and for that matter, a socialist, economy or regime is the gateway to our economic freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we'll do our usual. We would take questions and, of course, contributions from our guest here. So if you'd like to make a point, just kindly raise your hands and I'd call you. So, Comrade will take you 1, Comrade 2, 3, 4, 5, Najib 6, and Bliss. All right. So please let's start. Okay. Stop.
Okay, fine. It's all right. Yeah. Once again, Comrade Kwesi Pratt has spoken at length, and it's very good. He said things will change and things can change. Okay, we're living in a country whereby we grow things that we do not eat, and we eat things that we do not grow here, and he can bear to that. I was listening to the news today. Our inflation rate has hit 54.1%. It's nothing good to write home about. So my question straight to Comrade Kwesi Pratt is this: in his own perspectives and analysis that he has spoken at length here, 10 years from now, where will Ghana's economy be? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Good evening, comrades.
Good evening.
Thank you so much, comrade, for your eloquent presentation on now we have seen the simple definition of debt restructuring. Comrade, the late Dan Latte spoke about domestication. I think that man, may his soul rest in peace, made a lot of noise on domestication, but I think we didn't take his advice, and now we are suffering. 2, in fact, today I listened to a radio. There was a call-in. A couple of people were crying, they were craving, they were cursing their stars that they work so hard, some work 40 years and above, brought their money from Europe because they have love for Ghana. They brought their money to invest in bonds, and now their monies are nowhere to be found. Looking at this is that what is the way forward? Now what happened to their monies? Because it is not their fault that the economy should be mismanaged. Thank you.
Uncle, thank you. Anytime I sit here and I listen to things like this, it makes me very, very sad. Because of what we just hear, Africa, Ghana, what we have, what we are capable of doing. And what I want to say simple is, the leaders who are pushing for a change, that they will develop more knowledge, that we can reach many Ghanaians, and not only Ghanaians, the entire African continent, because we are the one who's suffering most than other continents, that will be able to achieve that socialist thing. Thank you.
Good evening, comrades. We are very thankful to Comrade Kwesi Pratt. At least I believe that our current crop of leaders should be sent to the psychiatry, period. The reason is that humans, in the age of science, they've been able to take in rockets, short rockets to hit the moon. People are using pragmatic ways of solving problems. In fact, every year the Bagri Dam is even, when they spill the dam, it goes, carries people in flooding. And when a leader tells you that Ghana needs praise, by this time, it means that leader needs to be taken to the psychiatry. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this time, and good evening to you, comrades. Thank you, Mr. Kwesi Pratt. I think to make our economy very stable, I think we should revisit our agricultural system to improve, because our irrigation system is very bad, and there are a lot of things that is not helping our agricultural system, because if there is food, there will be employment for the youth and other people. And also, we should rethink or revamp the industries our former president, great president, of course, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah did. I think it will help us. Thank you.
Masa, I think the senior comrade has said it all. We are living in a system that clearly has failed us. We've built for ourselves a world that cannot sustain our own needs because there's so many greedy people, and that's how the system was created, to cater for the need of the few greedy, and the rest of us can perish. So we, and when I speak about we, I mean we, the younger ones coming up, should know that this is our world, and we must build a world we want for ourselves and generations unborn. We must find a way to get rid of this capitalist world and build out for ourselves a better world that everybody would feel proud about and happy with.
Well, thank you very much. I like to say that it is also important to recognize that for so many years now, domestic and external bondholders have made profits from government. And the profits that they made came from the working people of our country. The profits didn't jump from the sky. So it's also important to mention that those profits that has been made and the monies that they lended to our incompetent government that didn't use the money well, because unemployment keeps going up, access to social services keeps deteriorating, and all is vamped up into a system that is bent on extracting profit from working people. So it's not a function of debt holders and those who bought bonds. It is about discussing a system that continually perpetuates the extraction of profit from working people. So I want to look at it within that framework, that we must also talk about the profits that is being extracted, and we must build a society where value that is brought from the working people will be revamped into the system that benefits working class people. Thank you very much.
Right. So at this point, I'll take some few messages that have come that have been sent on our Facebook platform, and I would give the opportunity to Comrade Kwesi to also respond to some of the messages that have been said here. This is coming from a viewer. He says, for so many years, domestic and external bonds. Oh, I think he has to talk about what you just said. Okay, let me just read it. External bonds holders made astronomical profits from our country as a result of monies they lent to our incompetent government. These loans did not inure from the benefits. These loans did not inure to the benefit of our people. Unemployment keeps going high. Access to social service keeps deteriorating. Worse for the masses of our people. While I insist on government paying their debt, our people must understand that the neoliberal economic structure of debt are the ruling class instruments to exploit. Okay, so all right, so right. This says that the only candidate. Okay, so this is talking about the New Patriotic Party. This says that it seems the flag. Okay, we're not discussing Flagstaff House and McMill. Right. This says, good evening. This is coming from Steven inside Wa Ekropon. Congrats to Dr. Akoto. Okay, all right. Okay, I see what you want to discuss. This one says that. Okay, so I think most of the messages here has to do with the New Patriotic Party and their newly, resigned ministers and all that. So at this point, let's just invite Comrade Kwesi to also answer some of the questions that have been said here.
Well, we are really racing against time. It's news time, and there's not enough time to continue this discussion. I'd like to make just some small remarks. First, I'd like us to appreciate the presence in our midst today of our sister and comrade who goes by the name No Name and who is doing a remarkable job in the United States of America, contributing to the building of a new society. And we are so grateful she joined us today. Thank you for coming. Then I'd like to say that, look, there's no person who knows it all and who has the solution. And that is why it's important to organize fora like this one to facilitate the exchange of ideas and views and so on. It's a very important part of the struggle for liberation. It's a very important part of the struggle against capitalist exploitation and domination. And your continued participation in this program is healthy. And I'd like to invite every and anybody anywhere in this country. The space is very small, but very soon we'll be moving to the Kwame Nkrumah studio, which has bigger space. So we'd like to invite all of you to participate, in these discussions. It helps a lot. Finally, I'd like to urge all of you to keep your dial on Pan-African television. Keep your dial on Pan-African television because we bring you the best in everything. Best in news, best in current affairs, best in sports, best in everything. So keep your dial on Pan-African television. If you keep your dial on Pan-African television, you get to know a little more about the world and the problems that confront us all. And you encourage all of us working in this station to give up our best. Imagine our shock when, after 3 years of operating, we tried to find out where our viewership is. And it turned out that we are one of the 3 best, most watched stations in Ghana. Now we are broadcasting to 46 countries in Africa. And we are reaching Europe, and we are reaching South America. If we continue like this, we'll have the world in our sights very, very soon. It is possible, and we will do it. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming and participating in this program. And we should be making way for the news at 6:30. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, those of you who watch us in your homes and those of you who watch us on your telephones and so on. We are so grateful. We are here because you are there. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.